All right, so we are recording.
Hang on, let me just look and see if Kaylee, no, I'm not seeing Kaylee on the list. Okay. All right, I'll check and see if she comes in. This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the April 14th meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee at 7 p.m. I'm Narissa Wallen, Chair of the Triton Regional School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond, excuse me, in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Maureen?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paulise?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Linda?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Paul Mayette?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. And let me just see if Kaylee is here. Do not see her on the list. All right. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Triton Superintendent Brian Forget.
I'm here and I can hear you, and also want to let you know to add Teresa Carroll is here with Patrick as well to talk about senior activities. Just add her to your
All
list.
right. Put her on my list.
First sidekick.
School Business Administrator Kyle Warren.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Assistant Superintendent Kim Croto.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Special Education Administrator David McGee.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Triton High School Principal Patrick Kelly.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you and welcome. And I don't know what Teresa's official title is. I just think, is she your admin? Patrick, is that official? Okay, thank you. High School Principal Admin Teresa Carroll.
I'm here and I can hear you.
Thank you. Welcome, Teresa. All right. For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All right, so welcome to the April 14th meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee. Two quick notes under the chairperson's remarks. Actually one, I take that back. And that is that the budget drop-in sessions are coming up for anyone that's interested from the public. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. All right. So these are a chance, very informal typically. We'll have a couple of school committee members at each one. Brian and Kyle will typically be at each one. And it's just a chance for the public in advance of the town meetings to be able to come in and ask questions about the budget, since that'll be up at town meetings in late April and early May, depending on which town you live in. So the first one is tomorrow at noon, and that information was sent out both by email to the district, and it's also posted on social media. And then the second one is April 26th at 7 p.m. We tried to schedule those on either side of April vacation in advance of Newbury's, which is the first town meeting, which is the 27th. And also make sure that we had both a daytime and an evening slot so that regardless of people's work schedules, hopefully they would be able to join. So that was my only remark. We're going to move on with oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so, either by raising your hand on your video call, using the raise hand option on the participant screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. I'm just going to quickly read aloud the oral communication section of the agenda that referred to. It says members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes unless extended at the discretion of the chairperson. So with that, we will open public comment. So if anyone from the public would like to participate in public comment, you can either go to the participants tab and use the raise hand option, or you can raise your hand on your video call and we will unmute you. And I see none. All right.
I don't see anything.
Moving on from oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is item 4, the consent agenda. I'm going to read aloud the donations. The district is accepting a donation of a refrigerator from, I'm probably going to slaughter his name and I apologize for that, Jason Dicey, who is the store manager of Lowe's in Epping, New Hampshire, to be used in the TLC Cafe with a value of $999. A monetary donation from the Newburyport Farmers Market of $100 to be used to provide nutritional meals for students. All right, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank
I'll
you,
second.
Erin. All right, any discussion on the consent agenda? All right, I need a roll call vote, please. Erin?
Yes.
Thank you. Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Thank you. Maureen?
Yes.
Thank you. Caitlin?
Yes.
Thank you. Paulise?
Yes.
Thank you. Linda?
Yes.
Thank you. Paul Mayant?
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes as well, so that's unanimous. All right. And the next item on the agenda is student advisory report. And I will say I totally flopped on this one and did not email Kaylee. I'm sorry. It just totally slipped my mind this time. There's been a lot going on lately. So she is not here tonight. So we'll skip the student advisory and I will apologize to her by email. That brings us on to item 6, new business. Do any members need to raise new business?
I do.
Please.
It's not really new business, but Brian, can you do something about our emails and stop getting all the sales things being sent into our emails, please?
I would love it. And if I can stop yours, I bet I would say mine is 100-fold. So yeah, no, unfortunately there is, and we have good spam filters in place for yours as well. Just remember, the more you click, the more you get. But there is no way we could restrict that, and it would also likely restrict other emails that would come through. So sorry.
They're on the uptick. They know there's fucking money floating around out there. They're looking for it actively. That's for sure.
Literally, I get 150 emails a day that are, any, you name it, having to do with sales of COVID-related dividers and disinfectants and air quality and you name it. So yeah, someone's selling educational emails to someone. So
For sure. All right, thank you. Any other new business? All right, seeing none, that'll move us on to item 7, which is reports and deliberations. A is the class of 2021 graduation and senior activities. And I'm going to turn this over, I think, to Brian to introduce, and then Patrick and Teresa.
yes, so I'll quickly introduce Patrick
I
Kelly.
apologize. I'm just going to take 2 seconds and turn off my mic so I can grab a cough drop because for some reason I have this tickle that will not go away.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Patrick Kelly is the principal of Triton High School. I believe you all know him. And Teresa Carroll is the admin assistant for the high school. So they are here to give you an update. I was going to give you a brief update, but as details and information was beginning to solidify, we agreed it made sense to have them just come and give you an overall picture of what the current plans are for the end of year for the class of 2021. So Patrick, I will hand it to you.
So I'll start and do some of the overview of what the week leading up to graduation looks like, and kind of a high level overview of graduation. And then Teresa gets all the credit because she's doing all of the nitty gritty planning right now. So she gets all of the credit and is going to be able to speak to some of the details better. So I want to make sure she is fully recognized for all the work that's going on there. And I'm embarrassing her as we go through. So just starting, we want to make sure that we're celebrating the class of 2021 as best we can. This has been and will continue to be a different year, and we fully recognize how many things that they have missed out on, or how much their senior year has looked different than what they would have expected and imagined. And so we've been trying to look at the guidance and plan to make sure that anything that is able to be done within the guidance, we're able to try to do and move forward with in a safe manner. There are certainly things that we would love for them to be able to do that just won't be options this year. But anything that we are able to try to move forward with, we are trying to do so. So all the information we're going to share tonight is all information that is kind of currently where we're at with planning. For some of it, it's still in the process of being solidified, but this is where we are at and what we're going to be trying to move forward with. So the Friday, the 28th of May, which is the Friday before or the week before graduation, which would be the last day of classes for seniors, we're looking at hosting a prom. So the prom venue that we're looking at and that we're in the process of signing a contract on is the Meadow at Red Ridge Farm, which is in Salisbury. It's an outdoor venue, so we'd be hosting prom outside. We would still like to do our grand march, where instead of having it happen through the school, it would happen outside. So families would be able to sit in the stadium, distanced apart, be able to see their students and their dates walk down the track, or see their student without a date walk down the track, all dressed up, still have the opportunity to take pictures for our students, be able to dress up all fancy and have that moment. We'd be busing students back and forth from the venue as we normally would. It's nice having it be still in district, so we're not with a long bus ride. And then the actual dance itself would be from 6:30 to 9:30. So a shorter time frame. Part of that's because it's outside, so you have to contend with noise ordinances and things of that nature. But we want to keep it outside. We'd be looking to have, in the senior classes, in the process of booking these things, or trying to book these things, food trucks to help serve dinner. We wouldn't have something that students were seated around a table. They would be something that would be happening in shifts. And then once we were at the venue, students would be in groups of most likely 6. So they'd have their date and probably 2 other small groups that they would be kind of in their boxed off area. I think what we're really worried about, and what the guidance that came from the commissioner was really worried about, is having a large dance floor and having students all mingling on a large dance floor. And so our goal is to have students that are grouped in small groups where they're able to dance safely and then be distanced from others. So that's our thought in setting it up is to keep people spaced apart, keep people in small groups, let families know who's going to be in their small group. So families are making that choice in advance that they're choosing to have their child with kids in that small group. And one of the other kind of major stipulations that is out from the state right now is that any of these gatherings have to be capped at 150 people. So we're looking at just having our senior class. There'd be no guests from the outside, and there'd be no guests from other grades. So to be able to do this, we have to really limit the number of attendees and the number of participants. So we're the only way to do so would be to say that we can't have people from the outside, and we don't really necessarily want to have cohorts mixing from the outside in that fashion. And we also wouldn't want people from other grades, because that would quickly push us over that 150 person threshold. The students certainly make a compelling argument that they're in classes with those students, and that's not the issue. The issue is more that threshold of 150 students, and we want to make sure that we have availability for every senior to be able to attend that wants to. We don't want someone to miss out because of a date from another grade, unfortunately. Going into the next week, so one of the things that was a real success that I think was one of Teresa's brainchildren last year was having senior portrait photos out on the field. This was something that we were able to do for families where the student had their cap and gown, and everyone got a 5-minute time slot to have their own kind of mini photo shoot. And we had we hired a photographer to come and take photos of all of the students. We're looking to do the same thing this year. So we have someone that's coming, Krista McPhee from KMP Photography, who'll be taking 5-minute mini shoots of every student that wants to sign up. The pictures and doing that mini shoot is of no charge to the students. Currently, the prints, each student will get their file of photos, but they'll have a watermark on them. But if they want them printed, they're for $10 a photo. So it's kind of a nice way for students to get that picture in the space. One of the things that we heard from a number of families last year was, especially families that had previous graduates, was that they never got great pictures of their child at graduation. The pictures they got of their child previously were in front of the cafeteria or with lots of other people in the background, or they never got that that kind of special photo that they were hoping for or looking for. And they were really excited to have that time as a family out on the field where they could take their shot exactly where they want it and get the picture just right. So that's something that we're going to be offering on Wednesday and Thursday, so June 2nd and June 3rd, for all of our seniors that choose to sign up. On June 3rd, the seniors are going to do their senior sunrise. This is something that would traditionally happen early in the year, but they've been kind of looking forward to doing this and kind of having that moment where they're there as a class for sunrise, which will be always interesting for the adults, making sure that we're up and there as well, to be there with the students. But they'll be up at the field for their sunrise, and then have breakfast provided afterwards. They're looking at doing something that's individually wrapped. I think what their current thought is now is having some type of bagel and cream cheese breakfast that's easy to have individually wrapped and prepared for students, so that they can have their breakfast on the field with the sunrise, all distanced together. On Friday, June 4th, we're currently starting to try to plan a type of homecoming event. So normally, and one of the major events of senior year is that homecoming that takes place right before Thanksgiving. And so we're trying to mimic some of the aspects that you would traditionally have there, some of the games that would be played, but we're looking to schedule this and do this almost entirely, well, not almost entirely outside and on the fields, not on the turf field, because at that point we'll be setting up for graduation, but out on the fields so that we can have some of those carnival games and things that are happening at a distance, and kind of have a not just a celebration for our seniors, but have a celebration for all of our students at this point, for kind of moving all the way through what's been a pretty challenging year. And then lastly, we're looking at graduation. So graduation is going to be held on June 5th. Overwhelmingly from the parent surveys, people are looking at moving the graduate or preferring to move the graduation out of the morning. So we're looking at a 2 o'clock start time, and the location that we're looking at is in our stadium. Going through the parent survey data, that was something that, or parent and student survey data, that was something that people felt very strongly about, wanting to try to do it in our stadium as opposed to in an alternate location. We've gone through and really started mapping out logistics. Teresa and I met with Chief Lucy the other day to discuss logistics, and we're in the process of putting together the written documentation and plan for him as to what it would look like for official sign off. But he and Deputy Chief Fisher were quite impressed with the kind of initial proposal and thought process for how things would be run. I'm going to let Teresa take over to talk about the specifics in terms of how families will be situated out on the field, and maybe a little bit about moving people in and out.
Thank you, Patrick. So with a 2 p.m. graduation start, we are looking at arrivals starting and but not letting anybody into the stadium till about 1 p.m. We are going to be having our cone set up throughout the sidewalks. We have 2 sidewalks on either side in front of the building and along the entrances at 6 feet apart to keep our families separated as they filter in. Families would be escorted to, I'm calling it a box, but it's actually just like a spray painted box on the stadium. There are going to be no seat. The seats in our bleachers will not be utilized. Everybody will be out on the stadium. And in this box, that's a 9x6 box, we'll have comfortably 5 seats, 6 where it's needed, but comfortably 5 seats. And then each box will be 6 feet separated to the next. The box will contain 4 family members and 1 graduate. And so we're going to keep with that celebration that we had last year, where the graduates are able to celebrate with their family and then move up to the stage, get their diploma, and then they're able to go back for that warm embrace right back with their parents on the field. And like I said, each box is 6 feet apart. The walkways in between the boxes and the next aisle will be 12 feet. So there's comfortable space in between there. Our stage will be similar to what we did last year, where it's going to be 4 feet. So we're going to be looking up to prevent any odd sight lines or anything along those lines. Our stage is going to be in front of the bleachers. So all the boxes will be facing towards the bleachers and the school. And that way we can have our band and our singers comfortably in our bleachers, because they need to be 10 feet apart when they are performing. And they will have a grand space there in really the center of the show when they're performing. There is space that after everybody's box on the field, there is plenty of space that we can still have faculty members and elected officials out there. We can still have the adequate enough space for, with a 4-foot stage, we actually need to have a minimum of 48-foot ramps coming off the side. So we're actually have a little bit longer than that to make it comfortable for wheelchair accessibility, and a very grand entrance up to the stage and then back down. And everybody who's coming to their boxes, once they come through the tunnel, they will still be escorted by our faculty. They're going to be assigned boxes. Everybody will have tickets to enter. And then at the end, we will help escort them out into their cars to limit contacts between families to make sure that we're all staying as safe as can be. We're going to encourage everybody to stay in their car until that about 1 o'clock-ish, when we can start having everybody come in. At the end of it, because we've already done pictures on the field for the last 2 days, and kids have gotten their caps and gowns and everything's good, we're going to encourage everybody to just scoot along and have your celebrations at home versus in front of the cafeteria or in front of moving cars or anything like that, just to try to limit, again, any bump-ins with one another. But yeah, it should be, we were able to fit comfortably a few extra boxes compared to the amount of graduates we have, to make sure that everybody was spaced appropriately, and it would be 4 family members with each graduate.
The other reason we have additional boxes is for families that might have parents that are divorced, or families that might be split or look different. And so we want to make sure that in those situations, we're able to accommodate all families, however they may look. So we're trying to make sure that is something that we're able to fully accommodate, because it's obviously important for those students to have their people there with them. The other reason for the larger stage, quite honestly, is because we want graduation to have a certain look and feel. We want graduation to feel grand. And we think it's important to be really looking into, going forward, making sure that we have a type of event that really highlights the community and highlights the accomplishment in the moment. And so I think that's something that, going forward, we certainly want to make sure we're doing each year, that we're celebrating our students in a way that has some grandeur to it, because this is a major milestone in many of our students' lives, and I would say in all of our students' lives, but for some, it certainly will hold a greater weight. For some of our students, this may be their only graduation that they attend, and so we want to make sure that it is fully celebrated as best we're able to do. But truly, we're heavily invested in trying to make sure that we're keeping distancing and keeping safety protocols in place. One of the other major reasons, beyond the point of families being able to fully celebrate together, of having students and families kind of in their box together, is to keep that piece of social distancing, keep that piece of families staying in their units and almost having that kind of pod type structure, so that as we host a large scale event that is going to have upwards of probably 900 people at it, that we're doing it as safely as possible. And at this point in time, I think it makes the most sense to keep people with their families, and to keep them separated how we've designed it. And following graduation, for many who choose to sign up, will be their grad venture experience, which no one is supposed to at this point in time know the details of, and I don't have any of the details to divulge about what they would be off to or doing. So I can't spill the beans because I don't have any of them to spill.
But just to confirm, the thinking is that with the graduation starting at 2:00, they would be leaving from the school, hopefully. So it's a seamless, families get back in cars, kids.
That is, I believe, what the grad venture folks are planning.
Yeah.
And one of the benefits to that, that I know at times those that are planning grad venture experiences worry about, is students going off and getting involved in shenanigans and coming back, and then being worried about the students once they've come back. So I think that one of the things that they're excited about is the fact that they've got students that are there and that they know have been just completing their graduation, and everyone is safe at that point, and then ready to go off for a fun experience together.
And also with that 2 p.m. Graduation start, based off of both the survey and the lead time that we need to construct, 4 times as many, almost 5 times as many chairs as we typically have, plus a stage out on the stadium. We just need the later time. And then after the parents and students liking a later graduation and that survey, we're going for it for 2:00.
It's a not hot June day.
And no rain, and it's going to be amazing. And yes, that's
going to be a beautiful day.
yes.
All right. Thank you both for the updates.
Thank you.
I see hands popping up. So I saw Linda's first.
For any of these activities, you spoke about rain. What happens if it does rain?
So if it rains, we have to look at alternate dates, just like previously, we'd look at alternate dates. We can't move it inside
Right.
because then we'd either be significantly limited to the number of participants, or we would, we would just be significantly limited to the number of participants. We'd probably be inside our graduates and one, maybe two people with them. So it would, our best option is to have alternate dates for graduation.
Would you be having alternate dates for like the prom, or are you gonna have tents set up, or?
The alternate date, I don't know if the venue is available for an alternate date in between when we would be there and when graduation is. We try not to have things after graduation. I believe the venue does have tents from talking to Miss Walter, who's here and gone dark, but I believe the alternate venue does have tents, or the venue does have tents for prom. We would just prefer it to be outside and not under a tent, because once you put down the tent walls, you're basically setting up an indoor experience.
And I want to thank both of you for trying to make our 2021 class have the best end of the year that they could possibly have.
Thank
It's
you.
been a rough year, and this would be great for them to end their career having these events. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Linda. Maureen was next.
Well, first I'll echo what Linda just said and say thank you to Patrick and to Teresa for all that you put into planning this out, because I know it's not an easy thing to plan. And I've had 2 Triton grads myself, and you're doing a lot to keep it special for our current grads. So thank you for that. I just have a quick question. Is there going to be normally there's an award ceremony for the seniors about scholarships that get awarded? Are they still going to have something like that?
So we were talking about we were talking about that a little bit in our program coordinators meeting this afternoon, just in terms of, usually we do academic awards, like a whole morning of academic awards at the school, and trying to think about what that might look like and trying to plan around that. Last year, one of the things that we did was add the scholarships to graduation, and it worked well to be able to have everyone be recognized at that space. And quite honestly, it didn't add too much additional time to our graduation, and kind of worked really seamlessly and smoothly. The scholarship committees created videos and did their presentation of their scholarships and announcing of their scholarships individually with their students, and seemed to really like it. One of the other things that we have to worry about is that for many of the scholarship committees, they're people that are often in high risk categories. And so we don't necessarily want to be bringing them into the school to be presenting and, potentially exposing them as well. So last year that seemed to work well to include it in graduation. And I think our current thinking is that for the scholarship portion of it and the recognition of some of the awards, we would be including that in graduation. And then for some of the individual department academic awards, we're looking at trying to find a way to have a ceremony in school. We're also still trying to look at the ways in which we could do our top 10 assembly for the top 10% of the graduating class. Historically, it had been kind of a banquet dinner. We can't obviously do a banquet style dinner and having people sitting around a table. We had done a virtual night last year that was very well received. We're kind of going back and forth right now between doing a virtual evening and trying to see if there's a way to do something that is in person, and trying to feel out if there's a way to replicate enough of what the evening would look like in person, or if we're better off using the model that we did last year that was really successful. So so that's where kind of the scholarships and some of the awards assemblies are currently falling, but there'll be ample recognition for all of our students. We're just not definitive yet on the model for some of those.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Appreciate it.
Aaron, oh wait, Aaron had a hand up, went away. Did you get your question answered, Aaron?
The only other thing I was going to ask, most of the questions were answered. That's why I pulled it back down. But when you did the parent survey, were they aware that if the later start, that the kids would be leaving immediately to grad venture?
That wasn't something that was included in the survey.
Okay. I'm just curious. I'm wondering what the reaction would be. I understand why, and I understand why it's important, and it does help with the grad venture. But I'm just curious if any of the families are going to be disappointed that they're not going out to dinner or whatever it is afterwards.
Yep.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Paul Goldner?
I hope this isn't an issue, but do we have, if there's any seniors who are in quarantine or something at graduation, is there going to be any way that we can include them as well somehow?
So we believe one of the other reasons for putting the stage where we're looking to put it, and Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, but is the distance from the backside of the building to the stage gives us just enough space to run the cabling needed for streaming it. And so with the event last year, one of the other pieces of feedback that we got was how wonderful some of the aspects were to be able to have things live streamed, or for our awards assembly, or for our top 10%, for families that were out of state, for grandparents that live, we got thank you notes from grandparents that live in Indiana saying it was wonderful to feel like we were part of the events, even though we couldn't be there. And we may or may not have been able to fly out in a normal year, but we're so thrilled to be able to participate and feel like we were there with our grandchild. So our plan is to be able to live stream the event, and that's one of the reasons for the location of the stage, because once you get much past it, I believe it's 200 feet, the cord starts to become more ineffective for streaming the event. Did I get that right, Teresa?
Yes, so it's 200 feet. It actually has to be plugged into the school, so through the middle school and come out. So we can't go much further than the actual bleachers. We will be live streaming it to include everybody to really embrace the celebration of this class. So, kind of stuck right there.
Other questions from the committee? So I have a few. So on graduation, anticipating that, we have especially kind of the older population getting vaccinated, and some of those folks may want to attend, and that field gets super hot, having sat out there for graduation before. Is there going to be any effort to provide some shelter for grandparents, for instance, that may be coming, because it's hot at 11, so I can't imagine what it's going to be like at 2.
So
No, go ahead.
So unfortunately, we don't have tents to go over the turf. Like, we can't put them onto the turf. There are other locations, like through the tunnel, or unfortunately back in their cars, but we can't have the congregating underneath any locations like that. So it will be tough, but we do have water. We will have a water station set up. We will have things to help along those lines, but we're really trying to keep that box as much as possible to make sure that we are not crossing between families, to keep everybody as safe as possible.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And talking about things that we heard rave reviews on last year that I did not hear as part of this, no parade.
We're still trying to work out whether we can do the parade. The morning of seems tricky in terms of what's going to need to be set up at the venue or at the stadium, and getting people from the location and back in. And then one of the things that we were looking at was, do we try to do it the Friday evening before? And so it's something that we've certainly been talking about, but at this point, it just wasn't something I felt like we had enough to fully present out on.
Okay, that is fair. I just very often last year, even from people who did not have students in the district, I heard how wonderful it was, and I kept saying, "Yeah, I hear you. I will bring it up next year." So I'm doing my due diligence and bringing it up next year.
The parade was fantastic. It's just that bottlenecking. If everybody pulls in at the exact same time at the end of the parade, and now we're having them get out of their car and walk in. When we did the parade last time, they stayed in their car, so we didn't have to worry about that. It's everybody parking at the same time, trying to get to their box.
Yes. Although, as I remember from last year, bottlenecking was not an issue. At the beginning of the parade, arrived there far in advance of the end of the parade. On to kind of a more serious issue. So DESE has issued guidance on proms, and they strongly recommended against it, and then said if they were going to be held, that they recommended holding them much later in the year after school ended, because of the possibility of attendees having been vaccinated by that point. I guess we're going against DESE guidance here, so I'd like to know why.
So I would say, to me, the DESE guidance seems, I'm trying to choose my words carefully, doesn't seem like it is in accordance with a lot of the other decisions and choices that they have made. And we're pushing back against proms. The parts of the proms that they are nervous about are the unmasked dining in large groups together and the kids dancing on a large dance floor and being inside at a venue. So those are the pieces that they are most worried about and the reasons why they think that proms are problematic. They also make a comment that I struggle with, because I think our students have by and large done a fantastic job, but that in their guidance they talk about proms providing students with an additional opportunity essentially to make bad choices. And they really doubt our students' ability to keep themselves, their friends, and their families safe. And I take issue with that because I think our kids have done exactly what we've asked of them. If you are to walk around our building right now, I'm not going to say our building is perfect, but our kids are following the safety precautions and are doing what they need to make sure that our school runs effectively. And high school students, as you know, are not the group that you would say of young people that we work with that are typically the most compliant, and they are doing what they need to do. So I take issue with some of the things that are involved in the DESE guidance. It also, doesn't fall in accordance with some of the other choices that they've made, like their decision to allow students to sit next to each other on buses. So sitting next to each other on a bus, they're saying now is safe to do, or sitting at 3 feet in a classroom is safe to do, but it's not safe to dance. And dancing they're saying is less safe than playing football or playing basketball or playing hockey. And I love those things, but I think we can set something up outside and in small groups, which is what their recommendation is for, or not DESE's, but the MIA's recommendation is for sports, is, thinking about cohorting kids in teams and having small subgroups so that you're able to keep them in pods, so that if there is someone that arrives that's positive, that the exposure is limited. And so I think for any of the things that we're looking at doing going forward, it's about how do we limit exposure and how do we make sure that we still are able to offer our students these types of experiences. In addition, I think it's just bad practice for schools to be hosting events for our graduates once they've graduated. There's an additional level of liability and risk that we assume as the school for students that are no longer our students. I would have a hard time approving anything as a building principal that was happening outside of our school year with our seniors, because we no longer have any real control or authority over those students. And so that takes on a whole additional level of liability and risk that I'm not particularly comfortable with moving forward with. So I do think we're able to host this safely. I do think we're able to move forward in a way that makes sense for our students and our community. Where, and also, quite frankly, not that this should be a determining factor in the decision. The vast majority of schools around us are in the same position and have been making the same determinations about the DESE guidance, that it doesn't make sense given everything else that they're choosing to do. So I would say that while it feels like we're going against their guidance, their guidance to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense on this one.
And I would just add, ditto everything that Patrick said and support that 110%. And also when you're looking at 140, 150 students in a very structured, controlled environment where there's a lot on the line, right? If things don't go well, there are consequences later on down in the next 10-day period. That's a much easier situation with volunteers to control than 600 students walking into the building every day. So, I mean, I think we've got systems and structures in place at the high school for the regular day. And so this is outdoors, masked, distanced, even more controlled and structured than a typical school day. So I agree with Patrick, and I haven't found a school yet that I've spoken with that's following the DESE guidance on this one. I'll use the word tone deaf. I mean, I just think it's even especially, and Patrick said it mildly, but when those students graduate, when they have a diploma in hand, they are not our responsibility. So we are taking on unprotected liability. Our insurers would say, not your students anymore if something goes sideways. So I think that's a disconnected statement to say, hold an event after graduation.
We also every day have that number of students eating inside in the cafeteria or in the gymnasium.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be, in at our prom venue outside. So, and those are indoor spaces. And
I've heard all of you said everything you've said. I'm struggling with prom. I got to admit it. Like everything I remember from prom, or everything I think of when I think of with prom is dancing close together and taking lots of pictures, which we know the face masks tend to come off for pictures, not necessarily at the event, but possibly, prior to the event. And I'm struggling with that. I understand that I may not have the support of the committee on this one, but I have concerns about prom. So moving on from that, I know other districts have explored this idea of like a social contract kind of signed by their students up front, looking for a zero, kind of acknowledging, I guess, that there will be a zero tolerance policy as far as events, because this is also, as you acknowledged, right, when we have events, they're much more controllable than what's happening outside of the events that are held actually by the school. Has that been considered at all?
are you talking about a social contract for attendance at our events? I'm
Yeah.
trying to follow what you're asking about.
Sorry, yes. So my understanding is that what some districts are doing is they are literally presenting like it's a obviously non-binding, right? But it's this acknowledgement letter that says, that you understand that to attend all of those events, there's an acknowledgement there that you're not, attending a senior week party or, doing another, whatever it happens to be, event at another school might offer, or things outside of those events. And that's sort of the trade-off. If you're going to participate in these, then you're not, going off and having a party with your friends on Sunday night, the day after prom.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of the acknowledgement that I think is important to have as part of that, Narissa, is that if something happens or if someone that is in your group tests positive, that it can impact your ability to participate in graduation, that you will likely still be a close contact and be unable to participate in that graduation event. And so you've got to, be mindful of who you're with and what choices you're making during that time window.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I was just wondering if that's something you explore, because I
Yep.
think it's, it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to have that that kind of buy-in that says, yes, I've signed off on this.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely something that we're looking at. And yes, I'll stop there. Yeah.
All right. And just, I guess one more question before to kind of things go on. This is a lot in a very short period of time. Are you planning any testing as part of this?
That was what I just held myself back from saying. It's something that I haven't yet had a chance to talk to Nadine about, but it's something that I would certainly consider.
Okay. Yeah, I just think, obviously it's a lot in a short amount of time, and you've got event after event after event here. So knowing that, things that could, as safe as prom can be made, that something that happens there isn't going to have a sort of an exponential effect potentially at graduation or another event. I think it's just important to put those safeguards in place. All right. And that was all I had on my list. Anything else from anyone else in the committee? All right. I want to thank you for your time. This was tremendously informative, and I'm sure the seniors are going to be extremely excited to hear about these, and if they haven't already. And I think,
I also want to thank, because she's here in the room, Heather Walter, for some of the planning and work she's been doing with the seniors as one of the class officers. Her and Jamie Richards have done tremendous work to make sure that the seniors are gonna get all the things that they would hope for.
Terrific. Thank you, Heather. All right. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. You can drop off if you'd like to at this point.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right.
Lisa.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7B, the full in-person reopening update. I'm assuming this is back to you, Brian.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. I thought I was muted. So just a brief update. I would say it felt uneventful. It was a very smooth reopening. I feel like I need to be knocking on wood as I'm saying that. We obviously had our K-8 students return last Wednesday, the 7th. Had 3 days. We did have a case. It was 2 siblings appear or pop up at Newbury Elementary School. That was reported last week. Other than that, no other cases. And so far this week, it has been a very smooth transition back. As of this Monday, the high school came back in full at the main campus. I would say the 2 things that I've heard are an even balance of the vast majority are ecstatic to be back. You can see the smiles through the masks in the eyes. People are thrilled to be back. But along with that, there is, a significant population of students, specifically at the elementary level, who are struggling. And it's hard. It's hard for those students who have been in hybrid and return to full, a much easier transition. But as I had in my superintendent's report, we had roughly 40 students leave the remote academy and come back to full in person at the elementary level. And there are certainly students who are struggling with that. So we continue to work with them. Our principals, adjustment counselors, assistant principals, teachers, you name it, everyone. It's an all hands on deck approach. We're bringing in extra supports, mental health supports to support where we can and when we can. But by and large, it has been a very positive return. I would say the challenges have been in the morning, buses and parents. There are a lot of parent drop-offs in the morning and pickups in the afternoon. And so that has certainly seen a significant uptick. I would say at this point, in speaking with the principals, there's nothing that is suggesting that we should adjust start and end times and do anything staggered. It's a matter of minutes where there's a delay. And I think over time, as the comfort level grows, I think the number of students on the buses and what have you would grow and increase. And that would obviously be less families dropping off by car. So overall, it's very positive. The kind of the pinch points we talked about was pickup and dismissal. They were energetic for the first several days, and they continue to be the place where, you know, time and energy is spent. Lunches have gone very well at the middle school and high school. Obviously, we've talked about the fact that we rely on the tents out back in that back parking lot. And so that's an important note that we're utilizing those daily as a requirement. We're at the elementary. Kyle can give you an update on tents, but at this point, there's nothing where we're scheduled in the tents at the elementary level like we are at the middle school, high school level. To note that we did see a shift in the remote academy numbers. We had 41, and again, this was as of last Friday when I sent this report to you. We had 41 less students in the elementary remote academy. So 41 students shifted from the full-time remote academy into the full in-person learning. There are 2 classrooms at Pine Grove that ended up shifting. Pine Grove educators that shifted back to in-person learning, and there's a mixture from those remote classrooms. And I believe there was one other, Kim, was it a Salisbury classroom that was in process because the numbers were shrinking. A remote classroom was basically dissolving because of the numbers moving to full in-person. So with the 41 students that shifted to full in-person out of the remote academy, there was no change at the middle school. We actually, one more 8th grader is in the remote academy, and one came out in the 7th grade. So they're a net 0 change. As of last week, there were 38 new students that were full-time remote at the high school level that were previously not in the remote academy. So that number continues to ebb and flow. Again, that was what we had reported as of last week. I do know, and Patrick is gone now, but that was the first. We knew there were families that we weren't able to get a hold of, so we wouldn't know for sure in regards to those students at the high school level until this week happened. So that number, I believe, is there's a tick over 80 students, last conversation I had yesterday, that are full-time remote, either still in Florida Virtual Academy, or the majority are streaming full-time into Triton classes. So that was those are the big updates in regards to the change. I mean, it's for all the time and energy and effort and discussions, it felt uneventful. Obviously, that was because now all of a sudden the energy shifted to the schools. And so as I floated around, as I said, there are certainly hiccups. There are certainly things, bus routes and times and things that we know need to be adjusted. And they've been, I think, today, Wednesday, a week later after the shift and 3 days into the full high school shift, it's better than it was a week ago, and it will continue to tweak and improve. But so I don't know, Kim or Kyle, are there any kind of other updates, things that we should provide updates on? Kyle, you want to give an update on the tents?
Yeah, thank you. So like Brian mentioned, the tents at the high school, all set, good to go. With the elementary schools, we've received those tents. We've been having a challenge getting DigSafe to come out to each of those sites. We've been calling them every day. Our expectation is they should be coming in relatively soon. I'm not sure what the backlog is there, but talking with the vendor who's setting up the tents, they said that as soon as we get that clearance, they can come in the next day. So right now with the rainy weather expected for Thursday and Friday, we're planning on them coming out on Tuesday, or being set up next week, but hopefully on Tuesday. And just to reiterate also what Brian said, that at the elementary school, it's an added benefit of getting kids outside to have mass breaks or snack breaks, but not a requirement. So, but certainly want to get those set up as soon as possible.
We're fairly confident that by the time the students return from April break, because obviously next week is break, that they should be up sometime next week without.
Absolutely.
Just for the, I mean, you've probably all called DigSafe at your home. Usually they say a 72-hour response. And I've often had the experience where it's the next day, but it's been way more than 72 hours. Let's just say that. So not quite sure what the holdup is, as Kyle noted.
that it?
That's it. But Kim, any updates? I was gonna say any there. No, I think everything we talked about.
It's almost like no news is good news.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
it is great to see the kids back though. I feel like it's the first day of school all over again. It's exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The third first.
Right, I know, but this one seems it's better. It's more hopeful.
I will say that when I was around all the schools on the first day, that was said without prior knowledge. Everyone used that term, that it just felt like the first day. Felt like the first day energy-wise. It felt like the first day, figuring out new routines, classes that had been together, and it was only adding 5 students. It still felt entirely new, just because with everyone in the same room, it just kind of resets everything. So yeah, so first day all over again. And
I just to add that, the success that we've experienced, and again, that's not to say that there hasn't been any hiccups, but just a huge appreciation and sense of gratitude to the work that the principals have done, and the custodians, and the food service people, and the teachers, and just everybody. I think, it's really a proud moment to be part of this district, and to be able to go through something like this, and have these days that are fairly quiet and uneventful. It just gives you kind of a second to pause and just appreciate the community that you're part of. So kudos to everybody, and everybody even here tonight, like the school committee. So it's been a long journey. It's not over yet, but there's certainly a light at the end of the tunnel.
well said. So questions?
So I was just going to ask questions from the committee. Maureen?
So Brian, it was brought to my attention today, and I don't know if Patrick is still listening, but that at the high school, that parking has become an issue with the tents, that there now is no more parking available or something. There was an announcement made today. You know anything about the parking?
I don't know. I know that's been a discussion, because obviously if you drive out of the high school and look at the tents, I don't know how many, Kyle, 40 slots, there were a number of spaces, and now we have the Jersey barriers that the town of Newbury was thankfully willing to donate, so that we have the area cordoned off. But I can get answers for you, but I had not heard that. It certainly doesn't feel tight, but I will look into that and let you know.
Do you want me to answer?
Oh, you are here. I just looked and you weren't there. Patrick, great.
So it's 50 spots that we've lost due to the tents. And so for the spots that we typically have at the high school, we're out of spots. In order to have any additional spots, so if we needed to, for some reason, add something at this point, we'd have to ask the middle school for what they have left for additional spots for staffing. And so I know they do have a few left, but to take any of the middle school staffing spots, we'd have to ask for a favor.
Okay. So if there are no more spots left for high school drivers, is there a plan to, there are some kids that will drive to school and then go to a job after, or some type of sporting event or another activity, and they need their car. Where are they supposed to?
The hope is that they've already gotten their parking pass before this point in the year. So this would be for people that haven't previously gotten a parking pass.
Right. Okay. I just know there are kids that are getting licensed in the next month or so. So just,
yep.
There was a backup plan for students that do need to get themselves somewhere after school that they wouldn't be taking the bus for.
We can, again, I hadn't heard of this, so we can certainly, Patrick and I can have a discussion with Al and see what the available spaces are. I'm happy to park in the woods and give up my spot.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that the other person with her hand up would like to also join in this particular part of the conversation. Kaylee, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so this has happened before. It's not just a this year problem. Parking tends to get filled up before the end of the year. So it's not a COVID or a tent related issue, as opposed to it's the people that start driving earlier tend to be able to get a spot earlier in the year. So I know that they had originally talked about parking students on the grass by the entrances to the school. I don't know if that's still being looked at or not. No, it's not. Okay. Because it's happened in the past. It's relatively normal. It's something that Triton students just have always known to be factual, as opposed to it just being something this year. But this year, the only difference is that students don't have a monetary amount attached to that. It's purely first come, first serve. In the line to get your pass, everyone that has their parking assignment already has put in their paperwork, has their car and registration, everything on file, is already insured a spot for that day.
Thanks, Kaylee. Other questions? So back to tents, because this is one that was raised to me, Kyle, or maybe this is a Brian question, I don't know. So my understanding is that, because this came up at the PTA meeting last night in Raleigh, that without the tents, currently many of the teachers are taking their students outside for the mask breaks and to eat snack. In that they need 6 feet to be able to do that, and it's gonna rain and there are no tents. Is there a plan? I can say last night when we talked about it, they were hoping they were going up today so that wasn't going to be an issue.
Yeah, so I'll say I was under the impression that there is still space inside. I don't know if you want to jump in on that, Brian.
I was gonna say, I feel like the principals have all worked with backup plans, because even
Yeah.
with tents, right, 2 20 by 30 tents isn't going to solve a school of 500 students. So, and I don't know what the spaces are in each school, but each school has identified other spaces. I know at Pine Grove, they use other schools don't have these, but the kind of the extended learning areas where they can separate kids out and spread them out and schedule it. So it makes it more of a scheduling nightmare. But on rainy days, that is, yes, it is going to be we won't have the same ability to have the same simple schedule of having all the students out. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know they were talking last night about intending to use those heavily even for indoor recess on rainy days, being able to use those tents. So they clearly have plans for them. It's just, obviously they're not available yet, but they are champing at the bit to get them. So
Absolutely.
okay. Any other questions from the committee? All right, moving on. We are on 7C, the improvement planning process update.
So this is a very quick, just verbal update that this is, we keep talking about all the things we would normally be doing over the course of the year. So just wanted to get your thoughts on my thinking, which would be rather than to attempt to do any June presentations, that we would use that the first meeting in August, which is later in August, to present an updated, get back on track with an updated district strategy for improvement, school improvement plans from each of the schools, and have those presentations in August, then have those drive, obviously, the budget process that would begin later in the fall. So that's the extent of what I wanted to share, and just make sure that sounded like a good approach, or if there were other thoughts on that.
Comments from the committee? I think this is the best plan we have. And I have to say, this is coming up out of us, seems like all of a sudden now, but Brian and I have been talking about this kind of all along. And I've said to him, we need to prioritize this year. So let's get done what we need to get done. And, we can hit that improvement process when it makes sense. So that's been kind of where we're at. And now we're hopefully settling and ready to take everything on. So. All right. Any other questions or comments on that one? Okay, moving on. Item 7D is the committee reorganization planning. So this is born out of I don't know, it was either Deb or Dina, back when a few years ago, had suggested that that it would be good to have a discussion on reorganization planning prior to actually having to elect new officers after the election. So, you know, no officer election or selection prior to having all those members that will be serving on board for the coming year, but just to have a discussion as far as who is eligible to serve, who is willing to serve, that type of thing. So coming at this from a personal perspective, I'd like the committee's permission to kind of lead this off rather than being the last one, because I think I have some insight as the chair on that would be helpful in this, because I have a few suggestions. Are there any objections to that? Okay, all right. So the first thing, I guess, is that I want to say personally, I have, you know, served as the chair for a couple of years. This year has been tremendously difficult in a lot of different ways, and I will say I cannot do it next year. We went through the policies because there are actually policies that dictate who can serve, and the eligible folks are me, Maureen, Paul Lees, and Linda Litkowski. That's just both based on number of years and experience chairing elsewhere. I guess I have sort of two comments on this, and one before we get into a discussion, and one is that I would recommend that policy and advocacy take those policies and review them. I think when we think about leadership in this committee, I think saying that someone has to have served 2 years can be very restrictive, depending on where they come from, what experience they have. And honestly, like, this last year was 2 years in anyone's life as far as experience. I don't know how many years worth of meetings we've packed into 1 year, but it's a lot. And, you know, not to say that Paul and Caitlin, who came in new last year, could go and run a meeting, but I would say you're probably not far off, because you've seen and sat through enough of these that it's probably second nature to understand the flow of them now, which is, you know, kind of one of the most important things here. So I don't know if the rest of the committee supports that, but I think it's important to just both routinely do that, have a look at that type of a policy, but you know, just in light of who the committee could have as leaders and should have as leaders, making sure that that's as open as possible so that the committee in any given year can make a good decision, the best decision, without feeling like they're limited. I will say policies can be waived in putting officers in place. That's something that can definitely be done. But I think, you know, any committee and having policies in place is going to be reluctant to do that unless forced into a corner. You know, you have to feel like you really have to waive it in order to get to that point, because the natural tendency is to say that this structure, this policy is in place for a reason, right? And it's based on, in some cases, years or a decade of experience that have kind of formed that policy, and it limits choices. So that's one recommendation that I would make. The other recommendation that I would make is I think that there needs to be some carryover between either me and Maureen, or Maureen, hopefully going into the officers next year. There are still lots of balls in the air. There's lots of knowledge that's here. And I think, you know, if, for instance, Maureen ended up as chair, then put somebody else in a vice, Maureen says no, put somebody else in a vice chair position that that's there and ready to learn and, you know, can be supportive, but also be, you know, ready to be either a chair or a vice chair to carry over that transition in a coming year. I think that type of thing, or if there's an entirely new chair that has not sat in the chair and vice chair position in this last year, then you know, you put somebody in a vice chair position that can be there for that new chair, because it's a hard, I can say personally, having gone through it, it's a hard transition anytime. I think this is going to be an especially hard transition, and just my recommendation to the committee in making, you know, decisions on who's going to serve as time goes forward, though, that would be my recommendation, is making sure that there's some sort of continuity there as part of that process. So we actually missed this last year because COVID, like everything else. So the way it's been done in years past is that those that are eligible, we've kind of gone around and said if people are interested. I will add there's that one additional secretary position. The secretary is much more open. So actually anybody but Paul Mayette and Caitlin, I believe, could serve in that position, or, you know, obviously Paul Goldner's seat is up and contested. So if somebody new happened to move into that seat, then that person would not be eligible either. So it would be, you know, Erin would be added to that group. Paul Goldner, if he's still on, would be added to that group. And I believe that's it, right? Just check my, yes. So I'll leave it open to, I'll go to the four first. That could be a chair or a vice chair. And I just ask you to state whether or not you'd be willing to serve in one of those positions in the coming year. Again, just so that that the rest of the committee knows coming into that office or election, who would be willing. Try to do this fairly. I'm going in a roll call vote order. So the first person is you, Maureen. Sorry. I was trying to be fair.
Well, first I would say that I have enjoyed serving as vice chair with you, Narissa. It has been an incredibly challenging year. And it's just been a pleasure to serve with you as chair.
Right back at you.
And it's been tough. I mean, there, as everybody knows, there's times that you and I haven't agreed, but we've always, you know, had mutual respect for each other and just tried to get through the best we can. I do not want to be chair. I've watched, you know, very closely what you've gone through this past year, and I just don't want to put myself in that position. I have 1 year left on my term. I don't really think that I would run again. So I would happily help anybody that wants to be chair. And if that means serving as vice chair again, I would. But that's where I'm at.
Okay. And I'll go back and say, would you be willing to serve as secretary too, so we can knock that out? Yes or no on that one?
I've done secretary before, so yeah, I don't mind doing that.
Okay, thank you. Holly's.
I would mirror a lot of what
We lost your audio, Paul.
well, I guess that means I can't be anything then.
Perfectly played.
That's so helpful, Paul.
Timing is everything in life.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say what Maureen said. Although I haven't served in an officer position, I'm not really excited about taking on the position of chair. Maureen, I had hoped was going to step up, but I respect what she said and I understand it. I also have 1 year remaining, I think, on my term. So I'm not inclined to want to do any of the officers' positions because of the time constraints.
Okay.
Not saying I won't do it. I'm just saying I'm inclined not to. Your turn, Linda. Jump in.
I think I'm having trouble with my audio.
Waiting for everyone to put their hand on, like, nope, nope.
You know, I agree the same as Maureen and Paul. The chairperson is a vital position for the school committee. And you did it very well, Narissa. I know it was a tough year. And I believe this next year is probably going to be a tough year as well. Unfortunately, I'm running again this year. So I will be here for the next 3 years, unfortunately or unfortunately for you people. If no one else takes it, I guess I would have to step up and take it, but I was hoping someone else would take it, Maureen.
I count 2 votes so far, just saying. Personal tell, not official. Don't worry, Maureen.
Because I'm not really sure what happens if no one decides to step up as chair. Does that leave it to Kim and Brian?
I get to do whatever I want, whenever I want. I figured that would spur Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, in that situation, I mean, the other thing you can do is you can waive policy, right? And then in theory, you can put anyone on the committee in a chairperson position. So it opens it up to all, if the committee chose to, right? Opens it up to all 9 members. So that's always an option. We don't have to talk about that tonight, though. The main goal of this reorganization kind of conversation is who's willing, right? It sets up the conversation for after the election in May to kind of get in and have, you know, that really deeper conversation. So did you just say yes, Linda?
No, I didn't say yes. I just said if there was no other takers, I would step up and do it. But if someone else had that dire need to be the chairperson, I would step aside. I guess a question that we could ask the other members is if anybody else, even the ones that aren't
Eligible.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same.
Thank you. You know, if we could ask everybody, that anyone who would be interested, because then we'll know whether we have to waive the policy or not.
I mean, I can just go through everybody else. Do you want me to just put maybes in your columns?
Yes.
Linda? Okay. We'll come back to you. All right. I'll just go through the whole committee then. Erin, we'll go back to the top. No pressure. I know this was
No
probably-
pressure. I know. So I think you have some pretty solid maybes there, and I don't think you need to go further down on the list at all to be able to do it. Narissa, I've watched the amount of time and effort that you put into this role, and taking a look at, you know, all of that that's gone into it and all of that that you've dedicated to this. I don't think I'd be able to fill your shoes. I have other commitments that would definitely need to have focus on, that I don't know if I'd be able to give the same amount of time that you do to be able to sufficiently fill that role, especially, you know, not at this point in my life.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Erin. I appreciate that. And I guess I should say before I move on and ask you about other positions that that I will fully admit, and my children tell me, I am extra. I mean, there is no, we've I think it's, it's one of those things, right? The role somewhat adapts, right, to the person. There is nothing that says that parent emails have to be replied to. There are lots of committees where they go into empty box and they get no response. And that's been a ton of my time this year. There is nothing that says that a chair has to meet weekly with Brian, especially for the amount of time we've spent meeting weekly the past year, or that you have to be available during the daytime. I mean, Dina before me worked part-time. So I'm sure there were times that she said to Brian, like, no, I'm not available right now, right? Call me after 3. I'm guessing that happened. So I would just say, recognize that to everyone, right? That recognize if you take one of these roles, it's yours to take, and yours to make what you want it to. You're not hopefully stepping into my shoes. You're stepping into a chair position you can take and make your own, and it can be whatever you want it to be. So all that said, so I'm taking that as a no to chair, vice chair, or secretary. Erin, are those no's too?
Can you explain a little bit more what the secretary does?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing is in situations where the administrative assistant, so in this case Sandy's been doing it, right, is unavailable, it would be note taking. When Sandy is available, then it's approving notes afterwards. So I can, I've been doing it lately because Tina's gone, and she was the secretary, and there were times that she wasn't here. So I mean, my notes just are basically kind of a framework of sort of what happened, and then in my agenda I just note who made motions with initials, how the vote went down, whether it was unanimous or whether there are abstentions, and if the people that abstain, what who it was. But that's the biggest thing. A lot of it is that kind of record keeping. And then occasionally in the past, and again, this is, I think, one of those situations where the person makes the role, right? When Dina was in that role, I know she very often would take on things like filling out forms or anything like that from the committee side, things that you typically think of, I think, for a secretary or a clerk.
Okay. My work situation that I do travel for work, and in this year, obviously, with being at home, I've been able to make every meeting, but in the past, I've had to actually tell you that I can't come. So that would be a factor in it when we do start traveling again for work. So
Okay.
I potentially could fill the role, but I don't know if there's somebody else that would have more stability in their situation to be able to cover that.
How about I put you in as a maybe?
That's fine.
That's
Secretary only.
Secretary only. Maybe got ends in the other columns. All right. Paul Goldner.
My record keeping abilities contemporaneously are not good. I would worry about my ability to do a secretary job. And I would worry about even were I to find the ability to do a chair job, I do not think that I have the ability to commit the time to it to do the job that I think would be necessary to do. And so that would be a difficult situation for me to take on. I would consider moving into the vice chair role if I'm reelected, and if there's no one else to move up into that, to move into that position. And you can put me as at a last resort for the chair, because I would consider doing it. I just don't feel like I could do the job that I think should be done for it.
Okay, thank you. Caitlin?
Brian and Kyle can attest to me running a meeting. So we're just gonna, and Paul Mayette and Narissa herself. So I'm gonna say I'm out as chair. Pretty strongly, last resort behind Paul Goldner. I don't know what I don't know. So I came on here with a willingness to learn and to take on things and to be a team player. I don't know if this is the year for me to take on a chair or vice chair. I like taking notes. It's a weird thing I do. If that was a necessary task, I would be willing to do it. Other than that, I think I just want to learn as much as I can and then maybe consider moving up
Okay.
later.
That is fair, and kudos for you for saying that at the end of year one, not even at the end of year one yet. Pauline, we already got. Linda, we already got. Paul Mayette.
I think I don't know what I don't know is about as well as can be stated. It occurred to me between executive session and this meeting tonight that I haven't seen the process in person yet of those some of those votes, and I would really feel much more comfortable. While I know what these meetings run like, I'd love to see the whole thing play out. I think I could, if needed, the secretary role is something I would feel comfortable with, but I'd like to have a year in person before moving beyond that.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And again, kudos to you for at the end of year one. So that's everyone that's left. All right. So at this point, I mean, there's nothing to be decided, right? This is just this is kind of the preparation for the May meeting to make sure that we're sort of in a position and people know, who's comfortable and willing. So any other discussion on this before we move on? I don't want to cut people off, but all right.
I have a question.
None. Oh, go ahead, Paulise.
I just have a question. So Brian, is there ever a situation where you think you could work with co-chairs? I just throw that out there because, I mean, everybody has time crunches here. And I know it's not, I always try to think outside the box. I know this isn't the way it's done, but I just throw it out there, co-chairs, vice chair, and secretary.
Yeah, I guess my response would be, I would say one of my strengths is I could work with anyone, right? So whether that's 2, 3, or 5 chairs, quad chairs, 4 of them. I don't know if that's legal. That's a whole other discussion. I have no idea. I mean, we can certainly do some research on that. But I could work with co-chairs for sure. Yeah, and I guess I would reiterate what Narissa said, that she's pretty extra. And so it is everyone has defined the role as chair, but she is the most extra. So I think that many people could be phenomenal chairs. And while Narissa has certainly set the bar high, I still think that you all could do a fabulous job of being the chair and be very effective. So, and whoever the chair is or co-chair, we can set our own kind of rhythm and work routine and kind of check in the schedule and make it work for sure. Yeah.
When I pass away from my school committee induced high blood pressure, I'm going to have them put most extra on my gravestone.
Hey,
We'll get that done.
That's a compliment.
Thanks, guys. All right. And Paul, I can reach out to Dorothy and ask. I have never heard of a school committee with co-chairs, but I don't want to say it's not a thing until I officially ask the question. So
Well,
I'll
I think what's important for the rest of the committee that hasn't been on for a long time is just to recognize that the 3 individuals that we've had, you and then Debbie Choate and Dina Sullivan, I mean, for years they just traded it back and forth, and it was a lot of work, and they were well suited to it. Both worked, and I wouldn't classify either of them as, I mean, they were part-time, but they were more on the full-time side than they were on the part-time side. So they were all in, and the committee was very fortunate. And right now we just have a number of people in this committee that have, very demanding jobs, and that's a problem.
It is very, very true. That is very true. So, okay. Moving on then, monthly report of the superintendent of schools.
Okay, so I go this very, very briefly because I gave you a quick update. You already talked about the budget drop-in session, Narissa, so that information is in the report. As far as the stadium repair, I think we've been talking about this for a long time. that back straight from basically light post to light post. If you go out there now, you'll see everything has been repaved. So we are scheduled to, I believe, end of next week, have the track resurfacing put down, and the fence re-cored into the concrete below the pavement, and the fence fabric stretched. And then the final will be the repainting, the striping of the new track surfacing where they have to replace it. So we are hopeful that it would be ready for the first spring meet of the spring track season, which would be that first week of May. That event may need to be postponed to the following week. We're confident by the following week it would be all set. So nothing new there other than with the weather and everything, it got delayed a little bit. Patrick gave you a far more extensive update along with Teresa in regards to end of year activities for the senior class. I will just note that we're reviewing 6th grade graduation ceremonies, 8th grade step up day, all those kind of final events for the 6th and 8th grade. Also looking at how we can do those safely. Are they drive-ins? Are they outdoor events? So working through all those details too. So hopefully we can replicate those events in a safe way, first and foremost safely, but provide those same opportunities for those students and families. Remote Academy, I reported to you. And again, this is now, I know, is outdated. So 3 less students overall in the Remote Academy from last month. Each month in my report, I give you a kind of a standing update. So we have 41 less in the elementary, same number in the middle school, 38 more fully remote students at the high school, for a net loss of 3 students in the Remote Academy. So I know this was one of the discussions we had pretty extensively when we were trying to plan out the full return. This matches what families reported to us on the survey responses, that this is what we planned for. And so it has turned out well. And then just quick note on the weekly dashboard review, that is a little less formal, a little less routine, but that group is still meeting to have discussions like on the pool testing that we'll talk about shortly as well. So that is still that dashboard. You know, we've had some discussions about the dashboard, and I still do think it's an important tool. You know, the question is, would there ever be enough that would cause us to shift back? And I can tell you the answer is yes. Desi would say no, but I can tell you the answer is yes. And it's happening in a neighboring district for the rest of this week because of weekend events from last week, we'll say. So that dashboard is still an important tool, and it's something that we update real time on the case counts. It's within an hour or two of us having a case identified, that's updated. And then
Jordan.
So that's all I got. Any questions?
Questions from the committee? Brian, can you just looking at, I noticed we're starting to see retirements coming in. Do you have any idea how many retirements we're going to see this year? Is it going to be significantly, obviously very stressful year, right? We saw, I think, a few more last year than we traditionally see. Do you have a sense as to whether we're going to see more this year too?
I would say this year, for the planned folks we knew about, is a little lighter than previous years. But right, there were a lot of very late retirements last year. I think if anyone made it through this year, next year is looking pretty good. However, so I think, you know, there's a couple things that could impact that. The MTA filed a bill, an early retirement bill at the state level that would be anyone through the MTRS. That would provide an ability for folks to buy forward their retirement by 5 years. So that's my understanding. The way it's filed is that would have to be retiring in June of 21 this year or June of 22. So my guess is if that bill gains any traction, that would certainly motivate several educators. But we have I would say a larger class of retirees coming over the next 2 to 3 years. But this year we do have a handful, as you said on the reports, but there isn't a big jump at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, moving on. General action items, which is number 8. Moving into A, which is the 2021-2022 school year calendar.
Yeah, so you have in your packet 2 calendars. this was the plan. We talked about bringing 2 options. I'm going to hand this over to Kim to actually talk about the 2 options, the difference between the half days and the 90-minute early releases. But just to note that these calendars, one thing that you will notice that wasn't in previous calendars is Juneteenth Independence Day. That previously wasn't on our calendars because this is the first year it's a state holiday. It falls on it was originally on a Friday. This year it falls on a Saturday. So that is celebrated on a Saturday. Next year it falls on a Sunday, June 19th. So any state holidays that fall on a Sunday have to be observed the following Monday. So it wouldn't impact us if we don't have any snow days, because the last day of school shows on June 15th. But if we did use snow days, that pushed us to day 185. That would have to bump out that following week. So both of these options propose starting after Labor Day. I will say that is different, and as I'm talking to other schools in the area, most districts are starting before Labor Day. We've had lots of internal discussion. Educators are split. Had lots of discussion with families. Families are split. By and large, the kind of general sentiment has always been, let's start after Labor Day, the summer. Let's have the summer. Labor Day feels like the end of summer. Start school the week after. It is late. However, the decision here was A, kind of tradition, but B, we are planning a busy summer. We'll say that. Obviously, we always have our extended school year program for special education students, and Kim and the principals continue to work through extensive summer offerings. So there's going to be a lot more students that are a lot more involved in academic programming, right? Not just camps, not just fun activities, but in some intensive learning opportunities as well. So as we looked at that, focusing, I believe, July 6th, Kim, through second week, wrapping up second week of August.
Correct.
To start that last week of August really puts no time. If we're going to have any, all of our educators need a break, and by golly, they deserve it. But if we're trying to encourage educators to come back in and do summer work as well, to have a couple weeks at the beginning, to then commit to that summer programming, and then have a couple weeks off at the end of summer, at the end of August, and then truly start up after September. Just everyone I spoke with, overall the consensus was that just makes the most sense. So we would be the anomaly in the area starting after Labor Day, but I believe that's overall what makes the most sense. So that puts the 180th day of school on June 15th. And as I said, because of the Juneteenth holiday, it would put the 185th day on June 23rd. So we still have, another 5 days to use within the month if we needed to. That would allow for 10 days. So, so before we talk about half days, any questions about the calendar structure, the before after Labor Day basics? We'll say
Can I ask about one thing, Brian, because I know this had come up last year. The placement of the parent-teacher conferences in December, was there any further discussion on that? I'll just to rehash real quick, we've had, it's been kind of an ongoing thing from some parents that's very late for them to be having, in some cases, the first official discussion with the teacher. Obviously, they can reach out in advance if there is a need to. Teachers could do the same, but for some of the parents, I think that it feels very late in the school year for that to be your first official meeting with their student's teacher.
Can I jump in? I want to mimic what Narissa's saying. I've had that complaint from a number of constituents for quite some time.
I'm just curious if there's been more conversation on that at all.
Yeah.
So I can share with you just some of the insight as far as the report card committee and where that later conference date came from. It came from when we first introduced changing over from the grades where it was A, B, or C to the standards-based report cards. And one of the pieces of that standard-based based report cards is that teachers really needed to have solid evidence about student learning so that they could support any of their evaluations with that standard-based report card. And so when they started to really map out and look at our curriculum maps, there were a lot of routines that were established in the first month of the school. And then as they were getting into the real new learning per se, a lot of that really didn't even happen till October, November. And so they really felt like they needed a larger runway, especially at the beginning of the year, in order to provide valuable information to parents. Now, we went back and forth. We said, well, that is a long, we will admit that is a long span. And so we introduced obviously the progress report so that the parents would at least have some insight. What I think the teachers were concerned about is that if you held conferences earlier and you really weren't into the kind of heavy, more challenging academics, would you potentially give parents kind of this false assumption with just a little data to say, hey, your kid is on track, they're doing quite well, and then all of a sudden 3-4 weeks later, okay, we're really starting to see some concerns that we have. And so it really was that balance of, is it better to give them information and really not have the full picture, or is it better to kind of extend that time with an interim progress report and really feel confident about where that person is? Now, I would say as far as next year, I definitely would bring this conversation to that report card committee, because I think it's important for them to have some say. But I would say if there's any year potentially not to move it up, it's going to be next year, because of the amount of work and time that is going to be needed for these teachers and students to work through some of that learning that wasn't allowed to happen just because of the restrictions with time. And so to really get an understanding where these kids are, remember, they're coming back from remote settings, they're coming back from homeschooling sections, they're coming back from potentially private schools. And so there is going to be a lot. And I do believe that teachers, and we will continue to stress this, that if there are early concerns with parents, and that goes both ways, if parents are really like, I don't like waiting, till December, I really need some information earlier, to encourage them to open up those communications with those teachers so that they don't have that kind of buildup of anxiety and having to wait, because we really encourage both the teachers and the parents to have that open communication about their child's progress.
And
Yes.
I was gonna say that we did, Kim and I had a kind of an email discussion with the principals, and I think everyone thought it's a worthy discussion. It just hasn't been on the radar since, I forget when you asked me that a month ago, Narissa, a month and a half ago. So I think everyone agreed it makes sense to discuss, and we certainly could change it, sometime in the fall. But I think it changes the overall purpose of the conferences, right? And so teachers want to go in to have, if they're sitting with a parent, they want to be able to sit and present data, and not beginning of year data to the kind of the formative, to say the starting point, but to show some progress and be able to speak in a meaningful way. So I think that's where, like Kim was talking about, that's why they're, after the first report card, the first trimester report card's done. If we're moving it earlier, we're changing the focus of the report card or of the conferences. And I think that's the shift, the discussion that has to happen.
Mm-hmm. So I guess at this state in the game, right, I wasn't going to suggest blowing up the calendar that you have to change that. So this was more of a, did you have the discussion? And, if not, can we ask again that it be had? I would just ask if you are going to have that conversation, if parents can be brought in, because I think there's two different sides here, and it can't, I fully respect the teacher side, but I think there's a parent side too. And one of the things that I've heard is that some of those parents have never had a situation where they've actually been able to talk to the teacher up until that point. Some of them cannot identify their child's teacher on site until they get into those parent-teacher conferences. It's very late in the year, and I think you know, until you have that level of I don't want to say it's familiarity, but at least that knowledge of who your student's teacher is, it's very hard from a parent's perspective to send that first email to say, I have concerns. Your you know, gut reaction, I think, is to try and help your child yourself, which to my thinking, we should always be trying to form partnerships. You know, that's what it's about. And I fear that those partnerships with, you know, it's many, many things, but in part it's this schedule that if you don't have that rapport already, that email doesn't get sent. And that's a disservice kind of all around, I think, because I know teachers want to be partners, and I know many parents want to be partners, and I know their students would appreciate it if that partnership was going on. Especially at the elementary level, obviously.
Yeah, I think this is very different at the elementary.
This is elementary.
Yeah.
I guess I would say that I don't know that the conference then is the solution to that, right? What you're speaking about is more about how do we establish those connections between the 20, call it, you know, on average 20 families and the educator, so that there's a meaningful relationship there early on.
Yeah,
So
there's a connection.
parent can reach out and feel comfortable saying, you know, hey, Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so, I got a concern, and that dialogue starts. So I think there's a larger discussion there to have than just conferences being that solution. So
yeah.
Valid point.
Yeah, we'll can definitely bring that.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. I don't know if anybody else has anything to raise, otherwise.
I was gonna say, before Kim starts, any questions on the overall structure?
Yeah.
And then Kim.
All right, seeing none, on to you, Kim. Thank you.
All right.
So I'm kind of keeping with the theme of change this year, and also learning from the change that we've experienced over this past year. We were looking as a committee, as the professional development committee reviews the calendar, obviously. And in the past, we've had half-day professional development days once a month. The experience this year of having more frequent professional development days on Mondays really provided a lot of support and encouraged collaboration amongst teachers at different grade levels and across schools. So the conversation at the professional development committee was around, well, is there any potential to continue to offer Monday releases and have it so that it's more than just once a month? We really want to meet more frequently. And so we did some research. We looked at other districts who have implemented this type of calendar, and actually some do it every single Monday, which we were impressed, but we also knew that that would be a big ask, because we know that this potentially will put some families at a disadvantage as far as looking for childcare options. And so we were proposing every other Monday as far as a calendar moving forward. And before I get into the specific details about that, I do actually have a presentation to share, because I think it's important for you to hear, not just from me, but the other people who are very closely involved with the development of the calendar and PD, and obviously who would be greatly impacted from this. So with that said, I do have a small or a short, I should say, video, not video, but presentation to share that does have some videos. So bear with me as I hopefully will get this right. Everybody see it? Yes?
Yes, we're good.
Okay. Just something. Okay. So this is just, again, I always think if you're going to change something or propose something new, it's really important to express the why behind it. So this is really just an overview of the benefits of meeting in person more frequently. So that would be professional development days every other Monday starting in October, and really the impact on student learning. So past practices, we have had, like I said, the half days that start in October, and they are once a month. And some of the challenges is that with that once a month opportunity, a lot of these teachers do not get to revisit some of their topics or see their colleagues for 4 weeks after that. And that's true too when you have special educators who are meeting with teachers. And so we also want to acknowledge that we moved those days from from Fridays to Mondays. And this year we put into practice that. And I can't tell you the benefits of just having professional development on a Monday as opposed to a Friday afternoon when people were really fatigued from the week. So that's kind of where we are in past practices. The other thing with past practices, I would say, is that there often are so many curriculum activities that are happening after the school day, but that limits the number of teachers that can actually attend those because they either have childcare issues or they have other jobs that they need to go to, but they are always interested in attending them. But because of those being scheduled after school, that does not allow that opportunity to happen. So then we again started to think about the future and the success that they've had meeting more regularly this year, and hopefully kind of rethinking about what that professional calendar would look like next year. So I have a message from our teaching and learning coordinator, Anna Bates, who is not able to be here today, but she is always very closely involved in developing the professional development calendar and working alongside the members of the professional development committee. So this is Anna Bates' brief message about the reasonings behind this shift and what it would mean for teaching and learning.
Hi, my name is Anna Bates. I'm the Teaching and Learning Coordinator, and I wanted to take a moment today to talk with you about the proposed professional development calendar for the 2021-2022 school year. So this proposed calendar offers educators the opportunity for more frequent collaboration and more frequent professional learning. And I wanted to share how this relates to recent research on effective professional development, but also what we see as the local impact of this proposed change. So first of all, effective professional development is defined as structured professional learning that results in changes in teacher practices and, most importantly, in improvements in student learning outcomes. Now, two characteristics of this type of effective professional learning is that effective PD supports collaboration amongst educators and is of sustained duration, meaning that it gives educators the time to learn something, practice it, implement it, reflect upon it. And those are two characteristics of our new proposed schedule. So locally, our proposal is to redesign the use of time to increase the frequency and opportunities for professional learning and collaboration. So what this will allow for is to educators to gain momentum as they work to continuously improve. It will allow for educators to engage in some activities during this time that previously may have pulled them from instruction. For instance, in the last few years, we have had curriculum review committees meet. We have had vertical collaborations that have had to occur during the school day, pulling the educators away from instruction. And I think most importantly, feedback from educators this year has highlighted the value of frequent collaboration in order for them to best support our students. And that is exactly what we're trying to do with this proposed schedule. Thank you.
All right, so that's Anna. And then we have...
Hi, my name is Anna Bates. I'm the Teaching and Learning Coordinator. And I wanted to take a moment to...
Sorry about that.
Hi, my name is Anna Bates. I'm the Teaching Coordinator.
Okay, we need to get. Perfect. Okay, so the next one, or slide that you're going to hear is a brief comment from Nicole Toothaker, who is a social studies teacher at the middle school.
Hi, my name is Nicole Toothaker. I am a 7th grade social studies teacher here at Triton. Over the past 12 years, I've served a variety of roles from administrator to teacher to parent. So I've probably seen every reaction given when the term professional development arises, from excitement to anxiety to just pure frustration and everything in between. But the truth of the matter is professional development offers teachers the opportunity to learn and grow. And when our teachers learn, our students learn. So in most educational PD sessions, it happens on a more monthly basis. But when it's provided bi-weekly, teachers and students benefit alike. Just the nature of meeting every other week provides more meeting opportunities for reflection and feedback for PD sessions that are ongoing. If I give my students feedback on their writing a month after they turned in the assignment, it just doesn't mean the same to them. You know, we're already moved on to some new topic or talking about a new assignment. It's just kind of like this out of sight, out of mind. And so it's just not as effective as if I had given them the feedback within the week's time. Meeting more regularly does promote, the school culture of learning and growing, where teachers receive more frequent opportunities to share ideas, pose questions, exchange materials, techniques, dive into the curriculum itself, and then obviously, of course, utilize student data to drive our instruction. Providing these learning opportunities in the form of early release days is beneficial because it just provides a school with a lot more flexibility in terms of coverage and interdisciplinary collaboration. As a social studies teacher, I cannot tell you all the times that I've wanted to attend the English, department meetings that are happening during school hours, but between lack of finding coverage and just honestly not wanting to leave my class, I haven't really been able to. And collaboration at all levels, both vertical and interdisciplinary, is key in achieving our common goals here, common learning goals here at Triton.
All right, and that is from Mrs. Toothaker. Whoops, wrong one. So just to recap, talking about the impact on student achievement, the collaborative culture that it would create or strengthen, and then a deeper knowledge around content and instructional practices. Now, we know that this does not come without a cost. We know that this will be a challenge for parents and families, but we are looking into options, especially at the elementary level, that would provide different opportunities for families. And we hope to have a more formalized kind of menu of ideas within the month. But at this point, we just hope that you really consider the greater benefits of these professional development days where we could meet every other, and the impact and the benefits that would provide or allow that to happen. So I can take any questions that you have about the calendar.
I was gonna say, so can I just add, so in your packet, you've got Annex 10 and 11. Nope, you've got Annex 11 and 12. Annex 11 is the traditional 8 half PD days, and you can see where we have those placed. And then Annex 12 is the proposed, as Kim talked about, replacing those 8 half days. Those come off the calendar, and instead there are, I think, 14 or 13, 14 half or 90-minute early releases. But again, to confirm, these are early releases. This leaves behind the 90-minute asynchronous afternoons that we have currently this year. It's what we shifted to currently, not what we had this past year, where students were learning and doing asynchronous work in the afternoons. This is a replacement for the half days. So now questions for Kim.
All right, Linda's up first.
Kim, does this include all the teachers, the IAs, everyone?
Yes, absolutely. And I can't tell you how challenging it has been to provide time for special educators and IAs and teachers to all meet, where this time would allow and give that structure to happen, especially if we're thinking about moving into more co-teaching models, and always trying to find that time within the day. And as Nicole had mentioned about coverage, that this absolutely could be an opportunity to schedule those meetings.
I'm glad you said co-teaching, because that was my next question.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to hear that co-teaching is going to be part of that.
Well, it's definitely part of the planning.
Well, I hope it's part of the big planning.
Yeah.
As far as parents, is they're going for those half days, is there going to be after school care offered?
So I can tell you, I mean, we obviously have kids club at all the 3 elementary schools. And in the past, when we've had half days, we have opened that up to people who are not regularly enrolled in kids club. Now, I mean, obviously we will have limitations on the number of kids that we're able to enroll in kids club. We are looking into reaching out to Boys and Girls Club, even the Ipswich Y, to see if they have some capacity of opening up their facility on those Mondays, and we'll be able to, you know, bus kids over there, and where they would have maybe potentially some childcare options. I just want to highlight again that out of this pandemic, we have really partnered with some of our community facilities, and the Boys and Girls Club and the Y are certainly, we developed some strong partnerships with them. So hoping that we can find a way or a solution to provide families some after school. The other area that we were looking to was to expand our exploration program. Again, this is nothing, I don't want you to think that these are already established and set in stones. These are just some of the brainstorming ideas that we're coming around, going to explore in hopes that they will actually, turn into a reality as far as options for parents.
No, I think that's great, because I think the additional days for professional development can only help our teachers and our students. So I think having parents have an alternative will make the additional days more palatable to them.
Yeah, I think so. And that's what our hope is. And the other thing I just want to mention too is that, again, as we come back from this past school year and previous year, there's going to need to be a lot of work around mapping out the curriculum maps and shifting, and knowing that we're going to need to scaffold a lot of curriculum and materials, and that it does not happen in isolation. That's hard work. I mean, teaching is hard work, but this is going to be a very challenging year for teachers, and to give them that opportunity to learn and grow and kind of troubleshoot with their colleagues is going to be really important.
My last question, I know I'm hogging up all the time, but is some of the professional development going to be around any social emotional?
Absolutely. Yep. And so I just want to say too, I want to make the point too, that this year, one of the agreements as far as between the teachers and the district and the administration was that their days would be their days. We would not try to schedule anything in, because we wanted to respect their time. That will shift. Obviously next year, there will be some guided professional development where the administration will be looking towards focusing some of those days on their strategic plan, reaching their specific goals that they have in mind. But I would absolutely say that social and emotional, and really that re-engagement into the school community is going to be the top priority. It won't be all of the meetings, but we will certainly have meetings that will be dedicated to that topic.
I want to thank you for all the work on this that you and Bates have done on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Paul Goldner?
Linda asked a lot of the questions I was going to ask, especially about that kids club option. Really, I want to say that I think this is great. I think the more frequent that you can have teachers getting together and collaborating and using that time, the more our students are going to benefit from them talking to each other and bouncing ideas off of each other and developing new ways of presenting. So I think this is great.
Thanks, Paul. Paulise?
Kim, I just want to know, how is the gross amount of time going to increase from how much time they do in PD this year versus next year, if you go to every other Mondays?
So you mean in a traditional year? So in a regular year, it's a half day. So I'm thinking we'll be meeting for less time every other 90 minutes. But remember and I was thinking about this the other day, when we have a half day early release, we still need to provide obviously lunchtime for teachers, and we also need to provide travel time in case where we have sessions that are at different places. And so what it comes down to is in a half day, what you gain is not much more time in the big picture. And we're also going to be doing more with Zoom across schools, but we also looked at time on learning. And Brian, it was actually a half an hour. The kids would actually be in school. Was it more days? No, not more days, more hours as far as time on learning.
Hours, it's 14 early releases, and it's giving up 8 half days. So we actually gain a little bit of time on learning. In the PD is slightly higher, even though it's, right, if theoretically, if it were half days and trading for 90 minutes, it would be 16 90 minutes, and we're only putting 14 in. But we still net more time on learning and PD time just because of the factors like Kim talked about, like how we need to schedule when staff are traveling between buildings and lunch breaks and stuff like that. So
it's pretty much a wash then.
It is on paper, it's a wash. Yeah.
And Paul, did I tell you Ipswich does this? Did I say that already?
Well, I didn't want to say that Ipswich is, because every time I say that, Brian thinks
I'll say it for you.
Lee's doll with the needle, and he
No, listen. We called them. We're like, okay, we need to interview. We need to find out which districts have done this and what do they, and their curriculum coordinator couldn't say enough great things about it. And she said, it's just amazing, the difference. And so, yeah, so I'm just putting that out there, Paul.
Any other questions? Paul Mayette?
Just add in terms of other districts doing it, we do it in North Andover as well. And it's when we use the time well, it's much better. There was so much complaint on staff before about not following up on initiatives. And this has really given us that opportunity to start something and then complete it.
Yeah.
Newburyport would have shifted to doing this year at the high school level had we not had the pandemic.
Are they going to do it next year, Paul?
Assume so.
Any other questions or comments? I guess I just have to ask, obviously there are two sides to this. Part of this is the teachers, but part of this is the families. Did we talk to any families? Obviously talked to a lot of teachers.
We did not talk to any families about this change, I would imagine. I think we have in the past, and I think we know for the most part, I think families would say, no, we need the kids right in school, and I can understand that. But I think, the benefits that their kids will receive from having these meetings more frequently, if we can somehow mitigate that childcare issue in the long run, it's going to be best for their students, and hopefully they will see that, and we will absolutely try to do what we can to support them. But I would imagine, honestly, Narissa, if we did, they would probably say, this does not work for us. And like they didn't want the Mondays. I think, was it the Mondays? They wanted to keep it on the Fridays when we switched the PD days.
They wanted Mondays. Mondays were preferred. Mondays and Fridays were the
Mondays and Fridays.
rather
yeah.
than doing it, we had them on Wednesdays, and it was
Oh, that's what it was. I knew we switched one day. Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Can Pauline just disappeared again, man? Does someone-
there.
There he is. Does someone want to make a motion? Or do you want me to suggest? I can give you the motion if somebody tells me which direction they want it to go in.
I make it.
Make a motion if you want.
You want to make the motion?
Yeah, I can make a motion to approve the 2020, 21, geez, 2022 school year calendar, Annex 12, right, as presented.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Linda. I think it is 12, right? Just double checking that before we actually vote this.
Yes, Annex 12. You could even note with 90-minute early releases.
I'm making a note that it has the 90-minute early releases.
Great
Yes.
idea, Maureen.
Thank you, Maury. All right. Any further discussion on this?
Yes, I just have a comment to make.
Go ahead, Linda.
That I know that Narissa, you were saying something about the not including the families. I think coming into this next year with the extraordinary year that we just had, that I think the school district has to make some different changes to incorporate better communication with the teachers and the students. And I think what Kim's team has done is just doing that, trying to do something different to try and help our students. So I just want to applaud that, that's all.
All right. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, I need a roll call vote, please. Erin. Did we lose Erin?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
there
sorry,
she
it's
is.
on mute.
Thank you. Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Paul Lees.
Yes.
Yeah, Linda,
Yes.
Paul Mayette.
Yes.
All right, and I'm a yes as well, so that passes unanimously. Thank you to Kim and Anna for their time on that.
Yeah, thank you both.
All right, moving on to the next item. We are on item 8B, which is pooled testing.
So you have, again, it wasn't with the agenda because the poll didn't close in time, but I provided for you on Monday. The last discussion we had in regards to pool testing was finding out what the interest was. And so you have that I sent to you on Monday, Annex 13, which shows that we did not have I would call it an underwhelming response rate. We had 276 staff out of about roughly 400 I would expect would reply. And we had 1,177 student responses out of approximately 2,300. So roughly 50% response rate, a little better than 50%, maybe 60% for staff. For staff, we have 57% saying they would participate, just shy of 43% saying they would not participate. For families, it was just shy of 63%, 62.8% said they would participate, and 37%, 37.2% saying they would not participate. So this brings up the question about the value of the spend. The questions we had last month were in regards to the fact that there would still be cost. So because it would depend on the number of participants, if we had everyone participating, our modeling would be that it would be approaching $20,000 per month for staffing. Had extensive conversations with our nurses, with Kristen Jolivet. We met with the data review group. Kristen Jolivet, as you know, is the public health nurse for Salisbury. And also is the hired lead contact tracer for the Triton schools. I would just say she is like everything COVID right now. So she is, as a public health nurse, is involved in all aspects. She's worked in other districts or is working with other districts that have implemented pool testing. It works well. Some of our neighbors who have two nurses per building, in those cases, they're able to manage it with those nurses so that there's a nurse in the school to be able to be the school nurse and all of the things that a school nurse normally does. And then another to manage the testing. Shy of having that ratio, it largely hasn't worked with the folks that I've spoken with. There is a possibility through the state to work with the vendors to procure those services as well. I think honestly it'd be cheaper for us to hire the people. So the way we modeled this out was, again, if we were processing 2,300 students or 2,000 students and 400 staff, it would be approaching $20,000 per month. In all likelihood, at the front side of that, it would probably be more like $7,500 to $10,000, just given the fact that we have half of staff and 2/3 of families that are saying they would participate. So that's where we landed. That was the information. We did meet with the data review group as well, and I don't want to speak for them entirely, and Kim and Maureen and Narissa can chime in as well. The general consensus was based on the lack of interest and Chris and Jolivet, specifically was saying, and I agree that if there's consistent and significant buy-in, then this is going to give us good actionable intelligence. There is a bias that we can't get away from, that those who likely wouldn't be participating to some degree are those that also wouldn't be following the protocols that we would hopefully they would be following outside of school. That's not to say, right, there are those that wouldn't be involved in the testing for many other reasons. But I don't know that this testing would give us the individuals who we'd be most concerned about not taking protective measures in and out of school. So that's where it stands as of right now. Just to confirm, Department of Ed is still confirmed that they are paying for this through the end of the year and into summer school. It is I wouldn't say a simple process, but it would be a process to get it up and rolling. My estimation is it would take a couple weeks to get it rolling if we made the decision to move forward with that.
So I can open it to discussion. Paul Goldner.
I mean, same thing I said a few weeks ago is that, I'd love to have this data. I think the more data there is, maybe it's not going to do much for us now, but I think all of this sort of data is going to be used to study what happened this year extensively, and we're going to learn from it. But it doesn't, I don't think with this buy-in, I don't think we're going to get as a district what we need to get from it. And, I'm not sure that it's catching things early enough in other places to prevent spread necessarily. So I don't see the need at this point, although I'd love to have it.
Can I add one more thing, just full disclosure to something that Paul said? So I've spoken to people who it's working well, and the participation, and when I say people, other superintendents, and participation is increasing over time. I've spoken with others that haven't done it and aren't going to do it. I've spoken with districts who have implemented it and still 6, 8, 10 weeks in still have 15, 17, 20% of the population, and they're just begging to get out because it is so much work for so little return in regards to case identification. So just full disclosure, you could go out and find case studies, or it's not a study, but examples of where this is working well, where it's working not at all, and where it's working poorly. It just has everything to do with the participation and buy-in.
Thanks, Brian. Linda?
That's just what I was gonna say, was that unless we have more of a participation, to me, it's not worth spending the money on that when we could spend the money elsewhere. That would be much more valuable.
Anyone else? So I guess I'll say what I said in the data review group, which is I think this is where guidance meets reality. You know, the guidance says this is a good idea. There's, you know, to Brian's point, there are all sorts of case studies out there, but there was actually one that came out just a couple of days ago where in looking at these programs, they were documenting that they were able, when there was like a universal testing program like this, they were able to identify clusters 2 days earlier than when it was individual testing, and that allowed them to then limit the spread on potential outbreaks that were happening. And there are many epidemiologists who swear by this. This is the golden standard, right? Is to get your testing and get your other mitigation factors in place. That said, you know, I think we pretty universally heard from, you know, our local medical folks that this was not a direction that they felt was worthwhile going in. Unfortunately, I guess, you know, to Patrick's point, sometimes you get the guidance and it doesn't fit what you believe of your local situation when you're talking to the folks that are actually on the ground. I still think it's a good idea to go ahead and do this, but not with that participation that was listed in the survey. And you know, I'm not even sure that what's in the survey is as high as it says it is. So I don't know. That's where I'm at, I guess. So does anyone else have any other comments, or I mean, we can just move along from this. All right, seeing none, that moves us on to policy and advocacy. We're in subcommittee reports and action items. Switch total agenda sections. Policy and advocacy is the first one up.
So we haven't met, but I am going to reach out to Erin and Paul to meet prior to the May meeting. So we haven't met, so.
The May full committee meeting, you mean, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Just making sure I was on the right page. Okay. Thank you, Linda. Finance, Caitlin.
I didn't see anything major to report, but I'm gonna throw it off to Kyle to double check as I just quickly flip through the notes from the last meeting.
Yeah, I agree with that statement. So we covered the usual agenda items and an update on the financial status, the COVID grants and all that.
And those are in the consent agenda if anybody wants to look through them. All right, thank you, Caitlin and Kyle. And personnel and negotiations, Paul.
So we haven't really met recently. Brian and Kyle have been doing a lot of the legwork with the unions. Brian, do you want to share where we are?
Yeah, so we have three AFSCME, which is the American Federation of Federal, I don't know, AFSCME, which is our custodians, head custodians, and cafeteria associations. So we've been meeting with them. The PNN charged Kyle and I with just having the discussions, having the preliminary discussions, and doing the groundwork. We are pretty much buttoned up with custodians and head custodians and waiting to finalize, hopefully by the end of the month, with cafeteria workers. And then we would bring that to the PNN and certainly continue the discussions and make those formal tentative agreements that we would bring to the full committee for approval. So with those contracts expire June 30. So I think we're on track. I can say to you, nothing major whatsoever. Very reasonable discussion. So we're easily on track to have that all buttoned up by the time we need to roll on July 1.
Beautiful.
And we should say, I'm realizing that you didn't report in public session, right? What you did in the executive session. So we should report on that. I'm happy to just quick review or have you do that.
Brian or Paul? It's up to you.
Brian, go ahead.
All right, so the committee met earlier in executive session to approve an MOA, a memorandum of understand or of agreement. It's actually an addendum to previous MOAs with the TRTA. As we've gone through the year, we obviously have a contract. We agreed an MOU last spring dealing with the closure. We agreed another MOU in November after negotiating extensively for the reopening of schools. We did another addendum as we approached the reopening and the transition back, and that was approved in March. And then tonight it was an addendum to deal with a couple, we'll call them housekeeping items, ranging from pay rates for teachers who are covering monitoring during their an extra duty, if you will, during their planning period, to tweaks in the evaluation system with changing deadlines and expectations, settle expectations, just given the impact of the pandemic year. So as with all the other MOUs, those will be, once signed, we'll get those executed and posted to the website.
All right, thank you. Anything else for PNN?
No.
Okay, thank you. There is no correspondence tonight, so that should be it. The next meeting is Wednesday, May 12th at 7 p.m. That'll be the May business meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Maureen getting the jump on Paul. I never thought I'd see the day.
And that's because she's going to be chair. That's why. That's what it is. You got to pay attention in life. Right on it.
Well played. Paul is on his game tonight. As far as the convincing, he is on his game. Sorry, Maureen. He has a point. Just saying.
All right. I need a roll call vote, please. Aaron?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paulise?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Paul Mayette?
My computer froze for a second. I just want to confirm we're voting to adjourn.
Yeah, there.
Just want to make sure. All right. Yes.
Thank you. All right, so that's unanimous. And we are all set to adjourn. Thank you all for your time tonight, and I will see you on May 12th. If not, I'm seeing you earlier in subcommittee meetings and all that fun stuff. Thank you all for your time and have a good night.
Thanks,
Hey,
everyone.
Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Can you turn off the recording for a minute? Because I want to address the committee.